Hi, it's Connie again. As you've learned, the structure of Tibetan is pretty different from English. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the best way to translate because of this. So when you're looking at a text, you might have to ask yourself, do you translate literally? Do you look at the meaning of every word and translate every single word, even if it sounds a little bit clunky in English? Or do you try to get the meaning of a sentence and translate for the meaning, even if you don't take all of the words into account? Or if you're translating poetry, do you want to try to preserve the poetic structure that you see in Tibetan when you translate it into English? And these are all big questions, and they're problems for all translators. There have even been huge conferences about translating Buddhist texts from Tibetan into English. So you're not alone if you struggle through these things while you're trying to learn Tibetan, or while you're trying to learn to translate Tibetan. Ultimately, it's up to you and the text that you're working with and the audience that's intended for your translation. So sometimes your style of translation is going to be different depending on what you're doing. But what's really important to remember is that every translation is an interpretation. There's no completely objective version of a translation. You can never really point at a translation of a text and say, this one is the right one, this one's the perfect one. Now, some translations may be clearer or more accurate than others, but you can't really say that there's an objectively best translation of anything, really, no matter what languages you're talking about. Now, there's a handout on our website that has some examples of different styles of translation. So you should take a look at that and see if you can figure out what the author's intentions are, what the translator's intentions are when they're translating the text in certain ways. Try to figure out what it is that they're favoring, what it is that they're privileging. And it's kind of interesting if you really take some time with different translations of the same text and see what each translator's agenda is. And if you want to, you can try this for yourself. Look at a sentence or two and try to translate it in a few different ways. Try to translate it literally, try to get every word exactly on the page there, translated into English. Or then try to approach it in a different way and try to translate it for the meaning and see if you can make it flow better, see if you can make it sound better when you translate it into English. And then think about it. Does one make more sense to you? Does one feel better to you? Can you think of ways that each of these different styles of translation might be useful? These are just some things to think about as we start learning how to translate and start practicing translating Tibetan texts. And as you progress, you'll find that you develop your own style when it comes to translation.